In today's video, we're going to be talking about this reaccumulation range that's developing here, as we've seen these reaccumulation ranges develop over the past few years, but we're also going to be talking about the reaccumulation ranges that we saw also in 2016, because if we compare 2016 to 2024, we'll see a lot of interesting tendencies, and it might actually help us understand where Bitcoin is going forward. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Like this video if you enjoy content like this going forward, and let's dive right into it. So if we quickly just look at the Bitcoin halving phases, we know that we've seen the pre-halving rally take place. It's probably over by this point. We've seen the pre-halving retrace take place because minus 17 downside has occurred already, equaling the 2020 pre-halving retrace of 2020. So maybe we're slowly transitioning away from this pre-halving retrace period to the reaccumulation period. So let's talk about that in a bit more detail, because the pre-halving retrace tends to occur 28 days before the halving occurs. And the whole goal of a pre-halving retrace is for price to retrace and offer a bargain buying opportunity, and the bottom of that retrace is supposed to form the bottom of the reaccumulation area. That's the goal of the pre-halving retrace. It's supposed to help us identify where that reaccumulation range is going to form, and it gives us two opportunities for bargain buying. The last bargain buying opportunity in the pre-halving period is what this pre-halving retrace enables, and in 2016 it enabled a 29% retrace, or 40% if you like to take into account this downside wick, but that pre-halving retrace enables downside before the halving, and the same thing happened in 2024, offering us 18% downside before the halving. So that's one of the bargain buying opportunities at this point in the cycle. The second and probably last bargain buying opportunity is going to be the reaccumulation range, and at the moment we don't know quite where this range is. However, where the pre-halving retrace begins is usually your range high, right? So this reaccumulation range high is going to be around this 70k region, which is approximately the old all-time high region from 2021. So we might have the very top of this reaccumulation range right now. So that's very important. It helps us understand better that this is now the range high, so we should be focusing on reaccumulating anything in the lower part of the range. And the pre-halving retrace, as we just talked about, helps us understand where is the bottom of that range. And so as a result, this downside wick, which took us from 18% downside, you can see right over here, this downside wick, I'm going to zoom in a bit. Bottom of this downside wick may very well be the bottom of this reaccumulation range. So if we continue to reject from here, then maybe we're going to drop further below into the range, and I'm going to talk to you about why this may be the case. Because when 2016 happened and we rejected into that pre-halving retrace, notice how we formed a downside wick, right? We developed and hammered out a base at the bottom of this reaccumulation range, approximately. We rebounded, and then we continued towards the downside and formed a base at that reaccumulation range bottom, which was solidified on this downside wick. And my thesis here is, are we repeating 2016 in the sense that that pre-halving retrace has hammered out a base at that reaccumulation range low, and now we could simply drop towards the bottom of this reaccumulation range low and just consolidate in a sinusoidal fashion, just like we saw here. Sinusoidal movement across the range until we're ready to break out from the range. So this 2016 period may be occurring right now, which is interesting, because if we do reject from the range high here, then we really need to focus on anything getting us closer to 60k. If we see some sort of downside wicking below the bottom of this range low, then that's going to be an even better opportunity. We've seen downside wicking below a range low before, so that wouldn't be out of the question as a possibility. We do get one downside wick that's very long in each reaccumulation range, so the question is this that downside wick, or are we still yet to see another downside wick? That remains to be seen, because if we look at reaccumulation ranges, you can see here one long downside wick and that's it. Whereas here, for instance, you see loads of small downside wicks. You also see upside wicks, right? Upside wicks also tend to occur. And you can see that this upside wick has occurred in this range as well. And also in this range, an upside wick occurred. And you can see actually when an upside wick occurs like this, we see a rejection back into the range low. Can you see that? This range high upside wick takes us back into the range low here as well. Upside wick takes us back into the range low, and upside wick here takes us back into the range low. So upside wick may take us back into the range low. Very interesting, something to really keep in mind going forward, because upside wicks and downside wicks tend to occur, but also this cycle 2024 showcases to us how it's a story of reaccumulation ranges. As we progress to higher and higher prices, we may be forming yet another reaccumulation range, mimicking 2016 in that regard, because you see lots of accumulation and reaccumulation again at highs. So 2016 was a story of reaccumulation ranges, and 2024 looks to be a story of reaccumulation as well, which is very fascinating because we tend to see reaccumulation around the halving event as well. So it's not just 2016 that we need to look at, but it's also 2020. Just notice how this is a beautiful reaccumulation range that develops. The pre-halving retrace occurs, 19% drawdown, and then we just consolidate for multiple weeks before breaking out into a reaccumulation range once again, which develops on top of this reaccumulation range, right? So it's as if we have two reaccumulation ranges developing on top of each other. It's generally one macro reaccumulation range, and it's something to really take into account as we go forward, because this was a relatively long reaccumulation range. If we compare this also to 2016, you can see that these reaccumulation ranges last a long time. They can last several weeks, but they always tend to begin with the pre-halving retrace before the halving itself, just like in 2020 as well. And then this reaccumulation range just stretches out weeks after the halving. That's something that we may need to expect going forward. But nonetheless, this reaccumulation range is going to enable the next parabolic rally to new all-time highs over time a few weeks after the halving. So we are in this period where we are in the last pre-halving retrace period. We are potentially transitioning into the reaccumulation period as well. But this pre-halving retrace is supposed to set price up for reaccumulation, and then this reaccumulation is supposed to set price up for post-halving parabolic price action. So it's very interesting to see that we are positioning, Bitcoin is positioning itself for that reaccumulation, and there are two investing strategies that this current phase in the cycle is inviting. Number one, any downside before the halving is a bargain buying opportunity. And number two, any reaccumulation going into the halving and after the halving is going to be the last bargain buying opportunity. And that simply remains to be the case across time. If you focus here on 2020, for instance, the bottom of the pre-halving retrace was that last bargain buying opportunity before the halving. And then after the halving, the last bargain buying opportunity was at the range low reaccumulation range, right? So you can see that the pre-halving retrace bargain is at a lower price than the reaccumulation range bargain buying opportunity. So we have to be open to the fact that this was the bargain in the pre-halving period, and maybe we might have to settle for a slightly higher price as the range low reaccumulation going forward. And also if we look at 2016 in that regard, you can see that this downside wick was lower as a pre-halving retrace bottom in the pre-halving period. It was lower than the candle-bodied bottom in the range low reaccumulation range as well. So this is a bargain, and this is a bargain. This pre-halving retrace bottom is a better bargain, but nonetheless, if we just come up with this kind of box where we should really be looking to accumulate, once on the pre-halving retrace bottom and once on the reaccumulation range low bottom, then it makes sense to really focus our accumulation on anything around the 60k region, anything below that. Of course, if we get a deeper retrace, because we've seen 18%, if we see that this pre-halving retrace isn't actually the bottom, could we see 20%? Could we see 25%, 30%? We'd be very lucky if that were to be the case. But if this is the bottom, then anything around this region is something to really focus on. And if we get anything extra than that, really important. At least from my perspective, I'm going to be really dollar cost averaging into this region around this 60k, sub 60k region. And the lower we go, the more I'm going to be dollar cost averaging, because I know, historically speaking, that these are the two last phases in the Bitcoin halving cycle. The last pre-halving retrace and the reaccumulation, those are the opportunities, the last bargain buying opportunities before we enter that post-halving parabolic upside. So I'm willing to accumulate at lower levels and maybe even hold in a loss in the short term so that I can comfortably hold and profit from my portfolio going into the parabolic price action towards new all-time highs. Because if we look at each of these phases, the pre-halving retrace is actually noise in the longer term. Reaccumulation is also noise, but always sets up that parabolic price action to new all-time highs. You can see this in 2020. This is all just noise before we see parabolic price action to new all-time highs, and the same thing here as well. It's just noise before that parabolic price action to new all-time highs. So we're currently at this point in the cycle. When we're looking at 2016 and 2020. So really important to make the most of it, because it's all about preparing for that post-halving parabolic upside. And you'll be glad that you've laid the foundation and laid those bricks to accumulating on any downside and any accumulation, any sideways accumulation, any sideways consolidation. That's the key right now, to prepare for that parabolic price action going forward that still lays ahead, but it's today and it's tomorrow that we can prepare ourselves for that fantastic period in the market that still lays ahead. Lots to look forward to. Thank you so much for watching today's video. Subscribe to the channel for more videos like this in the future. Like this video if you enjoy content like this going forward. I'm Rekt Capital. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll speak to you in the next one. Speak to you soon.